Please welcome our guest for the Sea Tales segment of the show, a true boating story aimed at making a safety point, Mr. Hal Newcomb. Hi, Mr. Newcomb. Could you tell us an enlightening story, perhaps something that's happened to you or that you're aware of?
Most people don't like to tell stories on themselves because most often it is embarrassing. But there's an old saying, it's older than I am, that there are old skippers and there are bold skippers, but there are no old, bold skippers. And this is probably something that's been borrowed from the airplane pilots and others, I'm sure. But having had perhaps over 50 years of experience here in the Pacific, past the international date line and locally, I've always prided myself on being a very prudent person when it came time to go to sea. There are no taxis and very little help when you really need it, and I've been party to some rescues and I've seen some people bobbing in the water that didn't wave back. So I'm quite aware of this. Several years ago I broke my arm, and at that time I was an owner of a 42-foot power cruiser, and I spent every week on that boat, every weekend, 2 or 3 days a week on the boat, and really looked forward to the hours that I spent on this. And more often than not I soloed, meaning that I went out by myself and was quite capable.
Single-handedly?
Yeah, single-handing, that's exactly what it is. And it sounds like it might be a big job, but once you get underway on a 40-foot power vessel, there are very few things that you have to do other than set it in automatic pilot, and if you have one, and make sure you've plotted a proper course. Well, I had broken my arm, and took me out of action for 3 or 4 weeks, and I became a little anxious, and a little over-anxious in order to get back on my boat, and I made the mistake of getting underway in the usual fashion by making fast my lines aboard so that all the loose gear was properly stowed, got out of the slip, started out the marina, and in this particular harbor, which happens to be Channel Islands Harbor, as you clear the breakwater, there's a pronounced surge at times coming in from the southwest. And after I'd cleared the harbor and was well underway, full tank of fuel, had a pretty good range, automatic pilot, I thought, oh my gosh, I forgot to secure my fenders. And if there's anything that looks worse to an experienced sailor is to see a vessel underway with fenders flopping in the water. So I thought, I better get those aboard. And as I was in the process of doing so, we caught one of these wild, turbulent waves that just caused a great big roll, a snap roll. And the first thing you'd think, that guy better start praying. Well, that's exactly what I did. Because if I hadn't dropped to my knees, my center of gravity would have been above the lifeline, and I would have toppled over the side with nobody aboard, no life jacket, no trailing lines, nothing to help me, and far enough out of the harbor that no one would have seen me. And my vessel, an automatic pilot, headed as far as it would go until it ran out of fuel. The moral of the story is that I shouldn't have gone out under those conditions, and having done so, I should have made quite certain that I was well prepared to put to sea. But it had a good ending. I did complete my cruise, and I was out for 3 days and came back happily. And as I sat in the dock on my return, talking to my wife and my daughter about my experience, the man in the slip next to me came in under sail with the mainsail up and no jib, and proceeded to come into my slip while I was already there. So it just goes to show you that it can happen at the dock.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the moral of the story is that you can't be too prepared, but you should not be in a rush. You know, take your time and don't rush things, and when in doubt, don't. If the weather might get bad, assume it will. Things of that sort.
Exactly right, Mark. And even the most judicious and experienced sailor will run into experiences, as we heard earlier from this one gentleman. Very experienced, very knowledgeable. It still can happen. So the person who who just doesn't use good common sense is certainly going to become a statistic.
Well, there certainly are enough statistics out there. If you pick up a nautical paper, we have quite a few people that die. And unfortunately, it's a lack of training, knowledge. People in a hurry. Hey, I have a boat, I want to get out. So I do appreciate your coming, Mr. Newcomb.
Thank you.
This has been Captain's Log.